Okay, so first things first, you're going to want the character model that you actually want to put the, uh, not necessarily put your character over, but more so whoever's animations you're going to use. That is the more important thing. So, say I'm making a mod, sure it might go over Zoe, for instance, but you will still want to use Bill's model for reference if you're going to be placing it on Bill's animations. So first of all, you want whatever animations you're going to use. I'm just going to use Bill's. He's got the best, in my opinion at least. And we can already see there's a lot of things on Bill that you don't necessarily need for your own model. So there's some bicep bones. These don't really matter. At least not for your model. We've got this thing. This doesn't really matter. So we'll go to here. This is the very not entirely what this tool was meant for, but the God Hand modding tools have a very useful feature of merging vertex groups. So say I don't want this thing, which I don't, I can click merge once I have it selected. Now it knows that's the one I want to merge. Click the one I want it to merge to, and click. Same with this. So I don't want this. So we're going to merge it there. Same over here. I'm just getting rid of bones that our character model won't need. So the elbow is just another helper bone. Don't need that. Put it to the forearm. These attachment bones you will actually need. They are kind of important. They are for, well, attachments. They are for like the bandages when healing or other sorts of things. The ulna and the wrist. Your character model won't need those. You'll make your own. All these weapon bones here, you will need those. Let's click these. And we want to attach it to the forearm. So there's a general flow of the Source Engine skeleton that you need to know. Of how, at least for this game, it's a little different with some other games, but for Left 4 Dead 2 in particular, in the first game, the skeleton is pretty straightforward. If you need to look at it further in depth, you can go over here. You can go to Viewport Display, turn off shapes, turn on axes, go into Edit Mode, select everything with A, click up here on Global, set it to Normal, and set this to Individual Origins, and then you can press S, 1, 0, enter, and you can scale up all the bones. This will not affect the animation at all. This is purely for show, just to more easily see the rotations and positionings of the bones. So generally, you have the pelvis, which is just the middle. Then you have the left and right thigh, which are the thighs. You have the calf. So you will also see some engines will have the knee bone. That is typically just a helper bone. As you can see, all it is for the knee. So we can just merge that. Don't need it. So the knee, or the calf is the important bone. That's the one that will actually be controlling your leg movement. Then you have the foot and toe 0. I don't know why it's called toe 0, but that's the name. Then going up to the spines, you have spine, spine 1, 2, and we skip 3 and go straight to 4. Don't know why, that's how they did it. Then you have neck 1 and head 1. There is no neck 0, no neck 2. No head 0, no head 2. It's just head 1 and neck 1. And then you have the upper arm, the forearm, and then you have the hand, which then connects to the fingers. So the fingers are very specific in their naming scheme. It may not make a lot of sense when you first look at it. It's like, oh, it's just a bunch of numbers. But the way to explain it is essentially, so you have the biped name, which is the valve biped, and then .bip01 underscore. That is used in everything. So just that. And you have underscore R, which means it's right, and then underscore finger, and then you have a number. So finger 0 will be the thumb. Finger 1 is the index. Finger 2 is middle. 3 is ring, and 4 is the pinky. And then essentially how it works is as you go down the finger, you add a 1 to the end. So finger 0 is the base of the thumb, 0-1 is the middle, and 0-2 is the end. And then it's the same for here. Finger 1 is the start of the index, finger 1-1 is the middle, and finger 1-2 is the end. So it just goes in that general style. So now we want to import whatever model we want to port. So I will take, for instance, let's go to a Back for Blood character, since I have those exported at the moment. We'll go to Evangelo, Elite 00, and I will just import his mesh. Okay, now we're going to click on his skeleton, make sure it's just him selected. We're going to Shift S, cursor to world origin. We're going to go up here and set this to 3D cursor and this back to global. Go into pose mode on his skeleton, select everything with A, and then rotate in whatever direction you need. So you can press R, and then I need to rotate it Z, so I'm going to press RZ, and then he needs to go negative 90 degrees. So I'm just going to type -90, and then enter. And then you will press S and scale it down to about the height you want, or scale it up depending on the model. I've already have a set scale for these guys. It is S.395. And then I use this plugin called Cats. For Blender 4.0 and above, you will need a unofficial fork of Cats, because it was not supported past 3 point something. So for the armature, you will select your characters once you have him all posed up and to the right height, and you will just click apply as rest pose. So we also want to make sure this is in front and to show the axes. Set this back to normal and this back to individual origins. We're going to go into edit mode with tab, select everything, S10 just to scale it up, and there we go. Now we have a good look at the bones. So the general thing with bones is a lot of people used to just completely re-rig the model or redo all the bones themselves, but there's an easy way around this actually. So you'll notice the reason why I have axes turned on is because you can see the bone rotations for these character models. And that's all that really matters when you're porting a character, is the rotations of your bones. So you can go into edit mode here and see this is already kind of facing in the same direction. So the general thing with source is that X will always face the next bone. So this is already doing that, but as you can see, the left clavicle bone for Bill here is facing upwards. So that's why we have this set to normal. Basically what that allows you to do is you can rotate along an axis, and you press R, X, and then I'm just going to do 90. And there you go. You have it now facing upwards and towards the next bone. Now Bill's here is a little rotated to the side, but that's just because his upper arm is more downwards than this character here. So it may not look like this, but that's okay because it's still facing the next bone. This one is also okay. These are too. And then we get to the hands. So the hands are the most difficult part when it comes to this, at least in my opinion, because the finger bones have very weird rotations on the source skeleton. So, at least on the l4d2 skeleton, your bones will always face away from the finger. So these right now are all faced in, so we're going to select them. You can scale them down a little bit, this is too much, so S.5. And there we go, that's a bit better. We're going to select this, these. Press W twice for this version of the select tool. I'm just holding shift and left clicking. And then we need to rotate it on the x-axis. So we're going to do RX90, RX90. One thing I have learned is never do RX180. Do not do that. As you can see, for some reason, when Blender does a full 180 on a bone's rotation, it fucks up the positioning. I'm not sure why, but doing 90 twice is just a better way to do it. Some finicky thing with how Blender does rotations. So now looking back at Bill's finger, we can see that it is facing directly upwards from like the fingernail. And we can see it's also facing towards the end of the thumb. So here, Evangelo's is kind of facing there, but it could use a little bit of an edit. So, for instance, you can see it's a little more too far that way. We need it to be more straight. So we're going to do RX and then like negative, or I guess positive. So RX 10. Not really enough. We'll undo that. Maybe try 30. That's a bit better. Now this is not really facing towards the end. So it needs to be facing like towards that little bit right there. So we're going to do RZ and then we'll try like 10. Alright, it needs to go in the negative direction. So RZ negative 10. Maybe a negative 15. There we go. So the reason why I'm doing these very specific values is because the best way to do it is to just copy it over to the other side. So for these, X is facing the wrong way, but that's a pretty easy fix. We're just going to select all these. And then we're going to RX90, RX90, RZ90, RZ90. And there we go. Now it's facing the other way. And what we did for the other one, it was like a X rotation of 30. It's going to be negative because it's on the other side. And then this was a Z of negative 15. And there we go. Now we have the same value on both sides, so they will be properly animated on both and will be symmetrical. Obviously there's more you can do with the other fingers, but for the sake of time, I will not do that right now. And then the most important part is definitely the spine area. Fingers are definitely important, but you can kind of get away with doing a little bit of hacky stuff with them. The spine is very important. So we're going to swap over to vertex up here. And then we're going to press G, hold Control, and aim towards the bone. And you can just snap it like that. So we're just going to line up all the spine bones with Evangelo's, like this. So I'm just pressing G, holding Control, left click. And then you also need to do the same for the neck. Now Evangelo has two neck bones here. We're just going to ignore the second one and just use generally where Bill's is. He also has a lot of bones in here, so you gotta be a little careful. Sometimes the vertex snap is being affected by the model, so you can just kind of hide it. I'm going to press Z and go into wireframe here just to see. The head bone is this bottom one. I know that because I've worked with the skeleton before. But if you're not quite sure, you can go just into pose mode and click around until you find where the bone is. So it's that little bottom axis right there. So we're going to go back into pose mode on Bill's skeleton, and we're going to snap it to that bottom one. There we go. So a problem you would run into is if you did it like this, although yes, they are connected like that, but you'll see that Evangelo has a second neck. So as you can see, he has 2 neck bones. Now we don't really need this one. We can keep it, or you can just get rid of it. So I'm just going to get rid of it personally. So I'm going to merge and merge it to the other neck. There we go. Now it is perfectly fine. He only has 2 neck bones, like he should. Now what you need to do is adjust the spine rotations. So obviously you need to adjust the rotations for every bone, as I showed with the fingers. So these would need adjusting. X is facing the wrong way, so you need to rotate it around. If you need to adjust the roll very specifically, you can go into this little section down here and manually adjust this little roll thing. So that's for the Y, because you can't control the Y in edit mode. The only way to do that is with this little roll function. So anyway, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click 5 on the numpad, and I'm going to click 3 on the numpad, and then go into wireframe by pressing Z and going into wireframe. Now what we need to do here is we need to line up Evangelo's bones with the rotation of the Left 4 Dead skeleton. So you can see this is going to be our pelvis, and Bill's pelvis is right here. So now what we need to do is line it up. Okay, so X is facing that way, so we're going to rotate it this way, and then rotate it all the way up. And that looks just about right. For these, I'm going to go back into numpad 3, going to rotate it 90, 90, and then what you're going to do is you're going to zoom in here. This is why I use the numpad option. And then you're going to rotate by, well, let's see, Z here. You're going to press RZ and just move it and click when it's close enough. You can zoom in some more, get a little more exact. Essentially what you're trying to do here is just aim up the Y axis to be facing in the same direction and be on the same rotation. Same with this one, RX90, RX90. Bring the Y close enough by rotating the Z. Zoom in and place it there. And then RX90, RX90. Bring it up. Zoom in some more. Get the lines to match up. There we go. Okay, last spine. The spines are really the only bones you need to do this for, as the rest of the bones in the skeleton can be pretty much relative to how the model is posed. So, you know, they don't need to be one-to-one with the Left 4 Dead rotations, but since all characters' spines will normally be in the straight up position in their default pose, they need to match up with the Left 4 Dead spines. Otherwise, they will not rotate correctly. Now we also have the neck, which is already pretty much facing the right way. I just need to line this up. Bam. And the head's a little messy here, just because there's so many bones in the skeleton. So I need to find head. There it is. Rotate it up. line it up with our little line right there. And there we go. There's also some bones that we don't need in the face. If you're doing facial expressions, I have another thing on that. But if you don't need them, what you can do is you can just kind of like duplicate the model, move it off by like, I don't know, 100 units, keep it there for now. You can make the facial animations on this later and transfer it back to your main model with some plugins. I use Mesh Data Transfer. I don't have it installed on this version, but just look up Mesh Data Transfer, you'll find it. You can essentially transfer shape keys from one model to another by closest, topology, or by UVs. So we're going to select all of these. These are all the face bones. We're not going to need them. And we're going to send them to the head. Same with this. You can go, and same with this. Now that we've cleaned up all that clutter, you can see he now matches up with the l4d2 rotations for most of his bones. The hand I did not adjust, but you can see, just look at Bill's model. It faces slightly off to the left. Basically, it seems like the Y faces towards the top of the hand, and the X points to around the ring finger. So, to do that, we're just going to find the hand, going to rotate it, and it needs to face around the top of the hand, so around like, I don't know, maybe 10 degrees less. There we go, that's about the top. And then this is one of the points where we need to use the roll. So we're just gonna adjust it to face in the general direction of that finger. Gonna go do the same over here. One thing you can do is if you're copying the roll from one to another, is you can paste it in as a negative. So negative, paste in the number, and then you can plus 180, and there you go. And now this was 10 degrees. There we go. Right about there will work. There is one thing to note is that some models will have metacarpals, or metacarpals, however you say it. It's sort of like this extra finger bone that controls the locations of the first bones of the fingers. So as you can see, this one controls Evangelo's pinky. We don't really need that, and if anything, it's going to cause rotation problems for our fingers. So we're just going to merge it. This is an IK bone. We don't really need that, so we can just get rid of that too. Wrist twist, this can be used as a helper bone. This one can too. There's also an elbow, that one can be used. This one, I don't really use the bicep helper bones that much. I mean, you can, but I've never really found a big use for them. It's also a shoulder one. That one could come in handy, but very iffy. The l4d2 character models do not really have enough deformation issues that you will really need these. Some models, sure, you need a bit of a shoulder fix-up, but most of the time you're not really going to need them. So half the time, I just get rid of those. So once you have all your bone rotations set up, which I don't yet, but for the sake of time, let's just say I do. Once you do that, you will go through and you will rename all of the bones to match the valve biped. And once you have done that, you can then do the proportion trick and such, do your helper bones, and get into source.